So we're back with some additional news on what's happening at COP26. What is being discussed now is, to a large extent, the possibility of reaching the 1.5 degree target or not, and as it being increasingly clear that we probably won't. I have to say that I think that the 1.5 degree target was a distraction. It shouldn't have been there. When it was set in 2015, I was still a researcher and we were discussing in our research group, and there was this agreement there that it is impossible to reach realistically. I think there is a danger in setting ambitious targets that you don't really have a plan for how to reach them, because then people get used to the targets, the goals not actually meaning anything. Because if we miss the first target, then maybe we miss the second target. You don't take them seriously. When they come up with the 1 degree targets, it's a little bit like you're at a party and you discuss with people, you're in a good mood, and you say, yeah, let's run a marathon together. And everyone's cheering and thinking that's an awesome idea. But the next day, no one shows up to practice because the exercise is quite different from the mood you were in during the party. This is a bit like that. You have to do the exercise as well. And most countries were not actually committed to it. A very important part about the commitment to the 1 degree target or any of these climate targets is that there is a discrepancy between the nations and regions in the world who are responsible for historic emissions and the regions in the world that are expected to cause the future emissions. Because historically, a large share of the emissions have happened in the US and Europe, which industrialized early, but we are becoming increasingly a small share of the global economy, because much more populated areas elsewhere in the world are now going through industrialization and their economies are booming. So even if we in the traditional West decarbonize quickly and reach really strict targets, we can't control where the climate is going really, because the majority of the expected future emissions will happen elsewhere in countries that still don't have commitments or plan, because they are now at really low per capita levels of emissions. So they don't feel that these targets apply to them to the same degree. And also, for most of these nations, they have more pressing needs on a shorter time scale than the climate. They need to put food on the table. They need to get people to school. They need to build their infrastructure. And this makes a lot of sense. Yet, if they don't also solve climate change, they will get sort of more pressing problems also in the future. Going back to the exercise analogy, it's hard to get someone to exercise for a marathon if they hadn't had food that day. How do we get them to sign on to this? And there I would say this is up to you. In companies, in various verticals, we can innovate our way out of this. As they have more pressing needs now, they need to build infrastructure and supply the needs of the people. If we can develop food, technologies, etc., that supply their needs, satisfy their needs without causing emissions, and getting these technologies up to scale so we can supply it cheaply enough, there won't be a conflict of interest between solving the urgent needs and working to solve climate change. So if it's easy for these countries to commit to solving climate change, we can expect that to also happen. And also another note on the 1.5 degree target, the 2 degree target. In the media, this is often portrayed as there being a cliff we're going over. We're going full post-apocalyptic Mad Max scenario if we overreach one of these targets. And I must stress this, that is not the case. That is not what's expected. There's a contingency of unpleasantness that will happen if we heat up the planet. The world will become a less thriving place to be in, but there's no known limit at which catastrophe happens. But you get more droughts, you get more loss of biodiversity, like losing coral reefs, lose rainforest areas. So if we go a long way towards the heating place, there is more reasons for conflict. The world will be a poorer place to live in with less biodiversity, less beauty, but society will be around. The highest risk for society when it comes to this is civil war and civil unrest caused by droughts and caused by refugee streams, etc. I think there is an error and a mistake in portraying it as a complete catastrophe if we miss the 1.5 degree target or the 2 degree targets. We should have targets to aim for. They need to be realistic, but we shouldn't overstate the horrible things that will happen if we miss them.